Hi, this is Andrea Lee with Core Vision Financial Group, and we are here today with another video on financial topics. I am your guest host because Brett Rice is actually going to be our star speaker today. And Brett is our resident CPFA, and what that stands for is a Certified Plan Fiduciary Advisor. So Brett is really kind of our in-house specialist on retirement plans and what they can offer, and just kind of everything in that realm and in that space. So with that, I'll let Brett kind of cover a little bit about himself and we'll get started.
Yeah, Brett Rice, financial advisor here at Core Vision. Been with Core Vision Financial Group about 3 years, and like Andrea said, I've been working on some retirement plans. And so today what we're going to do is hope to educate people on, some of the different aspects of their 401k or their employer-sponsored plans. So we can talk about, some education stuff. So that way when you sign up for a 401k and you're picking your investments and stuff, you've got some education on that so you understand a little bit about what those investments are, because traditionally employers do not give a lot of education on what those are when they sign you up for those plans.
Right. So hopefully after the end of this video, you'll feel a little bit more comfortable and a little bit, feel like you have a little bit more knowledge on that topic. So you want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, so, I'll say traditionally most people are in a 401k plan. Traditionally, if you're in manufacturing or retail or, a lot of those types of businesses, you're going to end up in a 401k as opposed to a 403b or 457 deferred, all of these other plans. There's a lot of these different types of plans out there. And today we're going to kind of speak in some generalities about what those plans are. And we're not going to get into the details of how they work so much specifically as we are like, what are some of the investments inside of them? Why is it important for you to get into them? When should you be getting into them? Start talking through all of those basics. How much should you be putting in there? How do you do research? All of those things, trying to give you a little bit of a field guide that says, hey, I'm going to go sign up for a 401k. What do I need to know about it?
Right.
So when we talk about a 401k, traditionally what we're talking about is an employer-sponsored plan. So when you start a job, your employer says, hey, as a benefit from you working here, we offer retirement services that allows you to build your assets for retirement. Now, traditionally, they do not give any guidance on the retirement, like which investments to pick. They don't tell you how much you should be putting in there or any of those type of things, because they just, that's not what they do. Right? There's somebody in human resources that is saying, look, I help you fill out the paperwork so you can get into it. And it really does kind of fall on the participant to become educated about the investments and to decide, because it's a personal decision on how much do you want to contribute, how much do you need in retirement, right? Those decisions are going to be pretty personal. When do you want to retire, right? Because that's a big deal. If you're going to retire in 35 years, your investment selection is completely different than somebody who's going to retire in less than 10 years. So, all of these decisions are going to be very personal decisions. So you don't really want to rely on someone in human resources who's unfamiliar with all those things, right? Your risk tolerance, your time horizon, those things are going to be very personal decisions that you need to use when trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, so, I was just going to say, I think that's really important, and that's probably why those HR people aren't, that's just not their space. And so they're not used to doing risk tolerance and may not even be familiar with that. And that obviously plays such a big role. So yeah, I think it's good you just touched on maybe why.
Yeah, and I think nowadays, and not so much in the past, but there's so much litigation around 401k plans right now that it's kind of scary if anybody from human resources would ever even offer that, just because of that right now. I read all the time in these publications about there's a law firm out there that literally goes looking for 401k plans that offer advice when they're not a fiduciary, not an advisor, and don't have those skills, because they're looking, hey, you're giving advice when you're not legally authorized to do that.
Brett, what's a fiduciary?
A fiduciary is someone who has a legal responsibility to make decisions based upon the good for the client. So I can't in good faith be a fiduciary to you if I'm more concerned on, hey, if I tell them to buy that, how's it going to affect me? You need to leave that out of it. It's, using this person's time horizon, retirement plans, all of that stuff in it, what is best for them.
Right. Putting the client's needs before our own. That's kind of how I like to explain it.
Absolutely. Putting your client's needs first is a great way to summarize my long-winded answer.
All right. So with that, who needs to be participating in their employer plan?
Yeah, that's one of those questions, a lot of people ask. Should I be participating? And in almost all cases, yes. Each individual person is basically responsible for their own retirement, right? I mean, there's going to be a few cases where you're like, there's going to be an inheritance, or there's some situation set up to where you're not going to have to be concerned with your retirement. But probably for 99% of people, you're personally going to be responsible for funding a vast majority of your own retirement, right? We're all hoping Social Security is going to be there when we get there. And, Social Security was never intended to fully fund anyone's retirement. It's there as a way to help people get to retirement. In the past they had pensions, they had Social Security, you had all these things that really set you up to do that. So now with the, moving in a different direction from pensions, and you get to the point to where everyone needs to build your own pension. You got to create your own nest egg of assets that help you be able to move into retirement with the confidence that I've done the planning, I've done the math, I know that my team has worked together and come up with a solution that when I hit those goals, I can retire and it's gonna be fine.
All right, so we covered who should, but why should they?
So participating in an employer plan for most people is the best way to save for retirement. I shall say traditionally, but a lot of plans offer an employer match. So you're going to get additional compensation from your company for working there in the form of, anywhere, I'll say 3% is a pretty decent number when people talk about what their employer contributes to their plan. So you're getting 3% of your annual salary contributed to your retirement plan. So we're going to call it free money, right? That gets added into your retirement account and helps you build your assets quicker.
And if I'm a new employee, when should I get started? Like, I don't know much about it. When do I decide that's what I want to do?
So, I would recommend anyone who's eligible for signing up for an employer plan do it as soon as they possibly can. A lot of times some companies will have a stipulation that says you've got to be here 1 year, or you have to be here, you have to work a certain number of hours. Usually it's 1,000 hours in a year to contribute. So once you meet those requirements, I would say immediately start contributing, right? Because the earlier you get involved, the easier it is to accumulate enough assets to retire.
The only thing, I love Jason Pike always says, the only thing we can't get more of is time. And it's true. And so the more time we're invested, the more time in the market, history has shown, the better off we are. So.
There's that great example that lots of people like to use, that if you have somebody who starts contributing at 20, does the maximum, say it's the $6,000 a year for 10 years, and then somebody else starts at 30 and contributes for the rest of their life, they'll never catch the first person. So time in the market is more important than timing the market. All
right, so I know I need to get started, but what do I invest in?
So choosing your investments in an employer plan can get a little complicated when you look at there and you see all of the choices and you don't know what those choices actually mean. Typically, employer plans offer what's called a target date fund. So you'll have a fund inside of your retirement plan that's going to have a date on it. 2040, 2045, 2050, 2055. And those are going to be kind of what we'll call your target date for retirement. So what that does is it builds a portfolio that, as based upon your time horizon, is going to get more conservative as it gets closer to that date. So every 5 years, it's going to go from, let's say in the beginning, it's 80-20 stocks to bonds. At 20 years from retirement, it's going to step down to where it's 70-30, and then it's going to step down at 40 to 60% stocks, 40% bonds. So as you get closer to retirement, it becomes more conservative, so that a recession or massive financial pullback in the markets in the last 5 years of your retirement doesn't absolutely sink your retirement assets, because you're still invested like you were when you were 20 years old. Because there have been many examples of somebody opened an employer plan in 1990 and then never changed their asset allocation or their investments, and then when they go to retire, it's 2009, they want to retire, and it's in the middle of the Great Recession. Well, they're still invested pretty aggressively like they were when they were in their 30s, and now their investments take a 40% hit, and they're contemplating that they have to work longer now. So these types of investments, as they move closer to retirement, get more conservative to help protect your assets a little more.
So that sounds perfect. Why wouldn't I do that?
So for some people, that's too conservative of a portfolio. They are okay with being more aggressive. So typically in these retirement plans, the employer will offer target date funds, and then will offer other investment types that you can use to create a portfolio that then would be more specific to your risk tolerance. And we keep referring to risk tolerance, and in the show notes and down in the comments, we're going to put a link to a risk tolerance questionnaire that's on Vanguard. That's pretty standard, asks some pretty basic questions, but helps you get an idea of how conservative or how aggressive you're personally are with your investments. Kind of helps you decide that, because a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to lose money, I want to be conservative. And then when we look at their investments, they're very aggressive, and they don't know. They just feel like, oh, my investments have always done really well,
right,
and I'm a very conservative person, so my investments are conservative. When you get into it and look, they may have just a few investments that are just all stock, and it's super aggressive, and you're like, I don't see that portfolio as conservative.
Right. Well, and when the market's been as cooperative as it has been lately, they're gonna go up, and so you don't realize, maybe if you don't have that large drop or decline in the market, that you're not maybe invested conservatively if you wish to be.
Right. I think that's why a lot of these employer plans that I've seen, that I've personally participated in now, will have a questionnaire and will help kind of guide you into a portfolio, which is nice, but not all of them offer that.
Well, and I think we also have a lot of tools that the average person isn't going to have, because they don't do that for a living. So I think that we have access to maybe some more options as well. Now, I've also heard about target funds, and that they tend to be expensive. So what does that mean? And is that good? Is that bad? What does that mean?
So the investments inside these 401ks, mutual funds, they're going to have some internal expenses, and there's going to be additional expenses inside of the fund that you're going to get charged for. When you look at these, target date funds are going to be usually lower than the individual investments. If you build your own portfolio, they're typically going to have a little bit higher expense ratio because they are individually managed, whereas the target date fund can be passively managed, and it's just on a trajectory where it's got percentages set up, and it hits a date, it hits a target, and it just adjusts automatically. So it's what they call passively managed. So they can be cheaper. They can have lower expense funds, not necessarily cheaper, just lower expense funds.
Okay. So I know that I want to get started. I know what I want to invest in. How do I do it?
So traditionally there'll be an enrollment period, usually within 60 days of when you're hired at a job. You'll get it in your employee packet. Normally when you're going through that process, you're really worried about getting signed up for your health insurance, right? That's like number one, is I got to get the health insurance signed up, because that does really have a very determined window there that you got to get signed up for in there. And there's other things, right? There's a whole list of benefits that come along there. But traditionally, when you go through that orientation process, you're gonna get your 401k in there. Now, it doesn't necessarily have a window like you can't get into it later, because my experience has been you can go on their website, usually create a login, it'll say who you are and who you work for, and you can just start your contributions at any time. You can change your contributions at any time. Speaking of that, more recently, those plans, when you sign up for them, include auto escalation plans. They include annual increases. So this is something new that has come around in order to help people save for retirement. They include this auto escalation clause. So annually, if you put in 3%, on January 1st, it's going to automatically go to 4%. And traditionally, there's a setting in there. You can say do 0.5%, do 1%. You can do that. There's also auto enrollment. There are some companies out there that when you start a job, they automatically enroll you in the 401k plan. They automatically set your contributions at 3%. They automatically do that in order to eliminate somebody saying, oh, I'll get to that later, and then they never do, and then 10 years down the road they're like, I never signed up for the 401k, right? And they just missed 10 years worth of time being in the market. And like Andrea said, time's the one thing you can't manipulate, you can't make more of, you can't do anything with it.
All right, so what if my employer doesn't offer an employer plan?
And there's lots of options. So at that point, if your employer does not offer any type of retirement plan, you need to go out on your own then and, talk to a financial professional and figure out, do I need to do a Roth? Do I need to do a traditional IRA? What do I need to do? What are the parameters for me to get involved in that to, take charge of my own retirement?
One thing I just thought of that we haven't covered, and I think maybe it's worth mentioning, one of the other benefits to contributing either to an employer plan or even to if your employer doesn't have a plan on your own, if you did like an IRA, there are some potential tax benefits as well. And so
Sure.
If you can increase your contributions, well, then that would lower your income. So it may lower your tax bracket, for example. So again, that's something that you get more into with your CPA, but that could potentially be another reason or another added benefit, I guess, all right, so my employer doesn't have a plan and I want to save for retirement. Where do I do that then? What are my options?
Right, so that's a great question, because there are self-employed people out there, or there are people that are employed by small businesses that don't offer those plans. So one of the things that we at Core Vision Financial Group will sit down with people and help them understand that and help make those decisions. Is a simple IRA plan, is a SEP plan. There are a lot of options out there for small business owners or people that work for companies that don't have plans. Like we talked about earlier, the traditional IRA, the Roth IRA. There's lots of those IRAs out there that people have opportunities to participate in that they may be unaware of. So communicating with a financial professional will help them figure that out. There are just lots of options out there.
Right. And I think too, if you are an employee of a small business that doesn't offer an employer plan, or if you yourself are a business owner and maybe you're getting to a point where you think you may want to offer a plan, absolutely give us a call. We'd be happy to talk, to talk through that and see if it does make sense for you, for sure. So absolutely don't ever hesitate to reach out if you've got questions, because that's literally what we do. We're here to help. Anything else you want to cover, Brett?
Well, one thing I want to make sure we touch on is rollover options. So nowadays, people don't necessarily stay at a job their entire life. You may have had 3 or 4 jobs during your career. You may have had 10 or 12 jobs during your career. So there are commonly, a few options. When you leave a job and you participated in their retirement plan, there are commonly a few options you have. You can roll it to your new plan. You can cash it out. You can roll it into a self-directed IRA. So, understanding all of those options and the impact that they have on taxes, IRS penalties, all of those things, is, you need to educate yourself on that so you understand, hey, if I take a cash distribution out of that, I'm going to pay income tax. If I'm under 59 and a half, I'm going to pay a 10% penalty to the IRS. So there's a lot of things. I mean, you could be paying 40% of that out in taxes and penalty when you take that distribution. So making sure you understand that math, and hey, if I take that distribution, yeah, I understand it's going to cost me 40% today, but what does that look like in 10 years? I personally have some familiarity with this, and I've done that, and I've done the math now on what that distribution cost me in 1996. It'll make you sick to your stomach when you talk about how much money that cost you. So I think
learn from Brett's mistake.
Right. So educating yourself on the options, I think, is the first step. Right. I mean, I understand people feel like, it's the only option I have. I didn't have that job, so I need. That's fine. Let's just make sure that you understand what all the options are. Because there are different ways to do that. So, let's just talk about what the options are and see what we can do to help you make sure that you've, exposed yourself to all those options.
Right. And sometimes there are also like hardship distributions that wouldn't cause a penalty, for example. But, if you don't tag it the right way when you do that distribution, then it would be a penalty. So that it's just really important that you talk to somebody who's able to educate you if you're not familiar with all of these rules and options that you may have. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you got some questions answered. If you have any more, feel free to give us a call, reach out via email. All that will be at the end of the video or in the notes. So again, feel free to reach out. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.